Welcome to Torah Smash, the podcast for nerdy Jews, where our lives of Jewish learning collide with our love of nerd culture. In each episode, we discuss what we lovingly call a Torah Smash, which we have defined as a beautiful collision of one thing from the world of Judaism with another from nerd culture. I am Barak Malkin, and joining me today are...
Ethan Lane Miller.
RGY.
Betsy Stone.
Yay! I'm so excited. Our guest for today's episode is Dr. Betsy Stone. Betsy is a retired psychologist who now uses her wisdom, experience, and passion as an engaging speaker and teaches throughout North America and Europe. She serves as a scholar in residence for congregations and clergy groups and has led webinars and seminars for organizations like Hillel, Hebrew Union College, and the Jewish Education Project as they navigate the complexities of their personal and professional roles. For Betsy, a day is not complete without Wordle, Quirtle, Spelling Bee, and the New York Times crossword. She also collects and has many, many, many Hanukkot. Welcome, Betsy.
Thank you so much. I actually also have many shofarot, but that they're not mine. They're my husband's. He's the shofar blower at our shul, and they keep multiplying in my house. Yeah. So
very fun. So excited.
And I can do the Sunday puzzle, and I can do the Saturday puzzle, and I can do the Friday puzzle, but I almost never can do the Thursday puzzle.
Is that notably the hardest?
No, the Saturday is the hardest.
Saturday is the hardest.
But the Thursday seems to me to be the quirkiest.
Thursday is the wordplay one. That's why it's my favorite.
Oh, that explains it. And I start doing it, and I think, what do they want from me? So.
Awesome.
I have been excited for this ever since Brock shared you're going to be on, Betsy.
I know
all three of us can spend the whole podcast talking about the ways you have intersected into our own lives in our own ways, but I'm
so
influenced
and positively influenced.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm thrilled to have you with us.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm really thrilled to be with you. I mean, who wouldn't be thrilled to be with three of the most wonderful guys in the world? So
our mothers,
your mothers see you in a much more complicated and deep and potentially deep way.
Well, I'm excited to get this chat with you. I remember that there was one point on a way to a retreat. You got quote unquote stuck next to me for the bus ride, and we had a wonderful conversation. And so I'm looking forward to that again.
That's great. I remember that too. That was so much fun. That was so much fun. And I was there when you met your wife.
You were there when I met my wife. That's very true. Before we were Barack and Michelle, and we were just Barack, Michelle, comma. Yeah, absolutely. So for today's episode, we're going to explore the Jewish practice of teshuva. Teshuva is a Hebrew word that is translated as repentance or return. And we hear this word every year on Yom Kippur when Jews traditionally ask for forgiveness for our wrongdoings from God and from other fellow human beings. And while every year there were model congregants that led the way in making genuine apologies to others, I don't think the full process of teshuva really hit me until I worked in the Nifty space. I really loved that the Reform Movement's youth program didn't exclude participants that broke their rules or agreements, but instead gave them a chance to do teshuva. In the process, they were counseled by a clergy member, made steps to apologize not only to themselves and their family, but their community as well. And when the teshuva process was complete, they were allowed to rejoin the community and helped to be leaders in positive action. And I liked this topic for an episode near the high holidays. And because earlier in the year, there was an announcement that a TV series that I think exemplifies this theme was announced to have an upcoming and final season. And although recent events have pushed this final season's release back by about a year, what TV series do you think is the smash for today's episode and really showcases a theme of repentance and return?
Trump's arraignments.
Wow.
Good guess. Not correct.
Bummer.
Well, I'm gonna use like some context clues. I'm gonna assume it's something nerdy.
So it's something nerdy. I'll give another clue before you guess. Also, is that the thing that is being repented for happened decades ago in a previous version that we've all probably seen also. So the series is a continuation based off of a previous property.
Oh, that's interesting.
Full House?
Did Full House have they did have a new TV series. No, not Full House. Good guess.
It's not whose line is it anyway?
It is not. It is not. What are they apologizing for?
Yes, it is. And it's also another.
Yes. Hey, they made fun of Drew a lot in the original
Oh, that's fun.
American version. I don't know, Barack. What you got?
I'm drawing a blank.
So
it's a return of a bachelorette.
Today, I'm sorry. So today we are going to take a look about how Johnny Lawrence's life completely changed after he swept the leg, and are going to take a look at the YouTube turned Netflix sequel series Cobra Kai.
Karate Kid.
Yeah, so the original Betsy for Susan, Cobra Kai is a continuation of the story from the original Karate Kid movie series that took place back in the 80s. So let's just start with this question of, have we seen the series or have we seen the movies? What's everybody's familiarity?
I've seen the first 2.5 seasons on my own, and then my wife started watching, and so we started watching together in the middle of the 3rd season, and I got tired of it at about the same point.
Oh,
okay.
Rough.
Is that just because she was there?
No, it's because I don't like plot lines that rely on the same gimmick every episode.
Yeah, we'll talk about that too. Yeah.
I saw the original Karate Kid movie when I was in middle school.
And that's it. That's the only property in this whole thing you've seen.
Yep.
Okay. Betsy, does he beat you?
I think I saw the original parts of the original Karate Kid when my children were watching it on videos, and I was walking through the room.
Okay.
Saying, what is this?
That is okay. I think we're still going to have a wonderfully entertaining conversation today, so don't worry. I think I've seen all of the Karate Kid movies, and I have watched the entire series of Cobra Kai. And I think I was a sucker for this show because I'm a big fan of stories from the, quote, villain side. Wicked, The True Story of the Three Little Pigs, Megamind, Monsters, Inc., etc. all take the version of a story that we think we know and show us the other side. So I remember hearing about the fan theory that launched this series that states that in the original Karate Kid, Danny LaRusso is actually the bully responsible for the events that unfolded and not Johnny Lawrence. That Danny was the new kid in town, and in their fight on the beach, Danny was actually the first one to throw a punch. And then months later at the Halloween party, Danny pranked Johnny unprovoked in the bathroom. There's a whole YouTube video about this that I'll try and put in the show notes for those that have watched the original and are curious about this, where this new Cobra Kai storyline came from. And we've talked about teshuva in some past episodes, but I want to break down the process and explore Cobra Kai through this lens. The Rambam identifies 3 steps to the teshuva process: regret, confession, and leaving the sin and committing to not do it again. So teshuva is not just about saying you're sorry, but it's supposed to shift the way you are living. You have to change who you are, in a sense. So can I offer that if we're going to use karate to teach how Judaism can change your life, that perhaps we call our dojo Cobra Kai?
Oh.
Go to timeout.
So anyone have any differences in the teshuva process that they're familiar with?
So I'm not sure that I'm directly answering that question, but I think that we very often think about the process of return as a process of actually literally returning to something that previously existed. And I think that the process of healing is actually a process of changing from what I was. And so I'm struggling to put together the word return, which is one of the words we hear a lot on Yom Kippur, with a deeper concept of teshuva, which is actually not returning, but being different. And the Rambam is saying you'd be in the same situation and you wouldn't do the same thing. That's not returning, that's learning. So I struggle with this concept every year because I don't think the goal is to go backwards. And I understand that in theory, I'm going back to my soul in its purest form, but that implies my soul is not learning a damn thing. And I want to be changed by complex experiences.
If we take the word teshuva and that we're translating as repentance or returning, and we just narrow it down to its most basic root, shuv, it's just turning. So it could be turning away from that piece of ourself that we want to be better, or turning towards the aspects that we want to improve.
That I'm much more comfortable with that. It also implies that I mean, the part of the magic of the word turning is that I see the world from a different place, that I am in a different space as I look at similar things. And
I love that.
And so that means I am influenced by seeing the world in more dimensions than I had before.
Yeah.
That's the philosophy behind reading the same 5 books again every year, is that the story on the scroll doesn't change, but we do. We have turned year after year as we turn the scroll back and forth.
So why do we think about this as returning as opposed to evolving?
I don't know if I don't agree with the return definition. I totally agree with this new change of exactly what you're saying, of this new perspective, this new point in your life, this new way that you behave. Maybe it's returning back to, and I think we'll talk about this later on, but return to the same opportunity and you make a different choice. And so maybe it's more of like this time travel return of like you have the chance to be back at this opportunity again and you choose a different path. You return back to the location, you choose a different path. But it's just simply stated as return instead of, right?
So is teshuva a state of mind, or is teshuva an action?
Oof.
Yes, and?
No, that's a cop-out. That's a cop-out. It doesn't matter at some level if it's a state of mind, if it's not an action.
So I think it's a state of mind that we demonstrate through our actions.
Yeah.
I would say maybe the hope is to eventually get to a pure state of mind, that there's a lot of action happening initially when you create change for the mistakes you've made. And I think the hopeful point, we talked about this in a recent episode of like the utopia that we have to get to for the Messiah, and how hard and complicated and almost impossible of a task that is.
God forbid.
Is that when we are presented with situations, maybe the act of teshuva is just in the moment realizing and thinking about how you've changed over your life so that you create or that you choose the right path at that moment to move forward, as opposed to choosing the path that's going to cause you to have to go back and change again.
We also say that I think the idea of Messiah is antithetical to the idea of teshuva, because the concept of Messiah means some dude is going to come and save us, whereas the concept of teshuva is that we are the heroes of our own story, as we said in our last episode, and we are responsible for our own actions. We're responsible for our own redemption. We're responsible for our own turning.
My mother once said that in so many words when she said, Judaism is not for the faint of heart.
So it makes me then wonder, is teshuva accomplished if I'm not tempted to do the bad thing? Or is it accomplished if I'm tempted and I don't do the bad thing? Right. I mean, think about this. If you're trying to quit smoking, is the issue that you still yearn for a cigarette? Or is the issue that you don't smoke the cigarette?
Oh, that's so good.
So I had a congregant, one of my new congregants, listen to episode 33 as their first episode. And they had this very question, because there's an issue they had where they don't want any contact with the person who offended them.
Hey, RDY.
Yeah.
For all of our friends, what was episode 33?
That was Cancel Lashon Hara. You can go back with
it was
special guest Rachel Frisch.
Cancel culture, and about how to, if someone has done this person wrong and they don't want any contact with them, so they don't want the person to be in the same situation, because at least not with them.
We're jumping to what I believe is the latter part of teshuva, and so I'm gonna pull us back in and bring us back to the starting part of this process. So to start teshuva, you have to recognize that what you did was wrong, and then feel genuine regret for your actions. In the original movie, where Johnny is the bully, He feels remorse almost instantly and even hands Danny the trophy himself when the tournament is over, even after all of the harm that was done throughout the film. In Cobra Kai, it really takes child endangerment at the end of season 2 for either of them to start feeling that their rivalry is wrong. But at least it was a start. And I think that this step may be one of the hardest, that it's not saying to anyone else that you're wrong. It's telling yourself that I'm wrong. You have to completely change your mindset, right?
There's really interesting psychological research looking at this question of intent and impact. And what it says is that I judge my behavior based on what I intended to do. And I judge your behavior based on the impact on me. So I say to you, I didn't mean to hurt you, as though that means I should be forgiven, you should overlook it. But if you say, I didn't mean to hurt you, to me, I think, but you did.
Right.
So I judge you on your impact and me on my intent. And that seems to be a pretty universal. I mean, if you think about the way you think and the way you talk to people when you've done harm, we almost all say, but I didn't mean it.
I think this comes over in emails so frequently of you read that the wrong way, or I didn't mean to like offend you. I should have added some fluff in there so that you knew that I was coming across very kind, as opposed to how you received that message, right? The intent of the email and how it was received, I think, is most frequent in today's world where we see this.
I was recently told by new staff who aren't used to me that I need to start adding emojis to my communiques so that they understand that it's lighthearted or that I'm not
sarcastic.
I'm just trying to get some stuff done. So
honesty, open communication.
Yeah. So they think I'm mad all the time, and I'm never mad at them that I'm aware of. And so I've started adding smiley faces to the end of every single.
I'm sure we'll get to this in a future episode. I have this theory, I don't know what to call it, practice that I've created of these 3 threes of relationship building. And it starts with communication, trust, and respect. And so you have that communication right now going on there, but they don't trust you yet because they don't know who you are. And so how can that other communication piece be received in the same way?
Right, because they're receiving it through the lens of their own previous experiences and those have nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Right. Even though the previous rabbi is a wonderful person.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny.
So in the show, are these two characters aware of their impact on each other, or are they only aware of their intention?
No, eventually, I would say that the first few seasons, right, which is probably why the reason RDY got so bored by the time he got to 3, because the first 2-3 seasons is a lot of the repetitive, don't they see what they've done? And of course, I'm not a bad person. I'm just trying to do this. Yeah. A lot of exactly what you're talking about, that they haven't changed their mindset yet. They haven't had the chance to step in the other person's shoes. And even when they did, it was all for show or for making somebody else feel better that I'll say I'm sorry, but I'm not going to mean it, sort of thing. Like, I'll do that, but then I'll go ahead and behind their back destroy their dojo or spray paint their billboard or whatever, right? Like they're apologizing for the sake of their kids or their spouses or the other relationships, but they don't think that they're wrong when they're apologizing. And that's his first step.
So my head is going in 2 directions, and you can pick which one of these you like better.
Great.
One is
both.
Regret.
That's a cop-out.
Regret is by its very nature painful. That's point 1. The other is there something innately wrong in regretting that I hurt you, but not regretting my behavior? So what if I said to you, the relationship between us is valuable enough that I'm sorry I hurt you, but I don't think I did anything wrong?
That absolutely happens in the show, right? Because there's these 2 different karate dojos that now exist in the first few seasons. And so I'm sorry that my dojo is hurting your dojo's membership, but I don't think that's a wrong thing because my dojo is the right dojo and yours is the bad one. So I don't mean to hurt you,
But I'm willing to.
I'm willing to. It's still the right thing to do here.
I gotta say, as far as an example goes, I don't get that from the show at all.
Oh, okay.
I get more of my dojo exists because your dojo is wrong. And the purpose of my dojo is to save Southern California, the Valley.
Right. From this horrible
dojo and the bullies who belong to it.
So they both believe their dojo exists because of the other. Like they owe their existence to each other.
To a certain point. Now it gets really complicated when Kreese comes back.
Yeah.
So, Johnny and Daniel are the two high school kids in the movies who become senseis in the TV show. And the sensei in the movie who was the bad guy sensei, the good guy sensei died, both in the TV show both in the TV show and in real life, Pat Morita.
Right.
Yeah. And the bad guy sensei in the movie comes back to the TV series and, goes back to playing the same character with absolutely no difference from the movies, except now his hands are arthritic. Other than that, he's exactly the same.
I know you've only seen the first 2.5 seasons. We're waiting for season 6 to come out. I'd say in season 5, John Kreese starts to change, sort of, but nowhere near the impact that you would hope somebody would.
Yeah.
Are his hands arthritic as a symbol of kind of the tension of being a rotten person?
I think this is something that we noticed in our Guardians of the Galaxy episode, is that I pay too much attention to hands.
At least it's not feet.
Oh my gosh.
But I want to return to this question.
Yeah.
Does it matter if I don't regret the behavior, but I regret the harm?
That's a great question.
Gosh.
I think it might matter less because it matters, but it's one of those like, I'm sorry if I hurt you.
Oh, but that's
yeah, I don't like it. I'm thinking
cheap.
I think it does matter. I think that if you then do teshuva and then do this action again, it still harms somebody else. If what you're doing isn't stopping the cause of somebody else to harm themselves or others, right? If you're not preventing the loss of life by your action, I think that you should regret your actions if it harms somebody else. Find another way around it.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with that, but my question, I think, may be slightly different, and maybe I'm not saying it clearly. What if what the other person needs you not to do or to do is something that not to do is easier? Don't use the word stupid. It just pisses me off. Well, okay, fine. But what if they ask you to do that and you don't have that same relationship with that particular word? Do you do something which you don't perceive to be you don't really regret? Do you change your behavior because of its impact, because the relationship is of greater value than the word?
I've given a real life example of exactly this, where my father was using Yiddish words that offended my wife, and she would say, "Don't do it." And the fuller version of the story is that, the story I told, I believe also in episode 33 was
the best episode ever.
Awesome. It was a good one.
It really was. Was that he stopped saying the word to her and then eventually also stopped saying it to me. But there was also a little bit that I left out of that story, which was he resisted for quite some time. That he would say, it's just a word that means this. And yeah, but the implication of that, it's Yiddish, so it's got implications and they're not nice. But the reason I believe, and I can't ask him, the reason I believe that he changed eventually is because he cared enough about my wife to look at himself through her eyes and to not want to hurt her
or make her uncomfortable.
And I think that changing just for her sake, it could be just as much teshuva as changing because he wanted to change, as we are, we're a people of deed over creed.
I really love this. I think that the idea that I would change in a meaningful or less meaningful way because I love you. like, what would be a better reason to change than because it strengthens the bridge between me and somebody I care for?
Yeah. I think this goes back when I was growing up, it was the golden rule, treat others how I want to be treated. Now, I think it's the platinum rule is the new one, where treat others as they want to be treated. And I think that's where this ties in, that if you know somebody doesn't want to be treated that way, and yet you still behave in that way, right, based on different cultures, different backgrounds, etc., I lean more towards the platinum rule than the golden rule.
So I've got an idea. So some of us might be familiar with Maimonides' ladder of Tzedakah. And it's this idea that there's a spectrum. Nodding. Sorry, what, RDY?
I said we're all nodding, but it's a podcast, so I wanted to say it out loud.
Yeah. I'm also doing that thing where I continue to talk so the listeners understand it too. So
does it help when we interrupt you?
Yeah, it's really helpful. It's really helpful. Okay. I love it when that happens.
Yeah.
So
go ahead whenever you're ready with your thing.
Yeah. So
and I am sorry for interrupting you.
No, you're not. Because you're going to do it again.
Oh, boy.
Now, Betsy, if you watched him observe and knew that he interrupted, and then you interrupted, where does that fall into this balance?
Oh, he's normed it as acceptable behavior.
Ethan is just shut down at this point. All right.
I know if remember Maimonides, everybody. Run
Who was Maimonides anyway? Right. Okay,
go ahead.
It's a fish ladder.
Yeah.
So it's the idea that there are different levels of tzedakah. That tzedakah is good, but there's some levels or ways of giving that are better than the other, such as when the recipient has asked for it, or when the donor gave it, but the donor gave it anonymously, or if it was done in partnership. And so the question that has begun to kind of formulate in my mind is there a ladder of teshuva? And I think the example that we were just talking about is a really interesting example that I might put up near the top, the idea that, you know what, I don't understand, but I see that it hurt you and I'm going to take steps to do it anyway, even if I don't understand, or maybe even if I disagree, that ultimately I would put that near the top of the ladder in our hypothetical ladder of teshuva.
And the bottom rung would be like, tell your sibling you're sorry.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the verbiage without any action.
Yeah. I think this is a great transition to step 2, which is confession. Right now we're talking about how we engage with the other person. So after you've apologized to yourself, you have to apologize to others. You have to undo any damage that was done and resolve not to do it again. And the characters in Cobra Kai do this one pretty often, as we said. They'll clean up the dojo they destroyed, or they'll apologize to others, but it may be because they were forced to do so, and it's less about their intention and more about just completing the task. I think this is a hard step also. You're a kid and you did something wrong, and you're told to say, I'm sorry, just as already what I just said, before you go back to playing. And practicing the action is good, but I don't think it always goes deeper. So how can we make sure that our apologies are good ones?
So is the apology to repair the relationship between me and the other person? Or is the apology to repair the relationship between me and God? Or is the apology to set it up that God will take me seriously? And if I don't believe in God, why would I do any of it?
And in the TV show, it's do I apologize to please my sensei?
So in some sense, with that description, you're outsourcing your conscience.
Wow. Aren't we doing that with God too?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we are doing that in community as well. I don't do these things in community. Yes. So what does it mean if we're outsourcing our conscience? Okay, I've stunned you.
Well, I would say I think I struggle with this because I'm such a people pleaser, making sure everybody's happy type of person, that I don't think these apologies are for yourself or for God. I think they're to make sure that the other person can feel whole again, and whatever that might mean. And so that
But do you think they do feel whole because you apologized?
No,
I'm not going to.
No. We're going to get I think part of this process of the confession is not just apologizing, but undoing any damage that you did. Right? There's a great song that my kids learned from Daniel Tiger that says, "Saying I'm sorry is the first step. Then how can I help?" Like, it's not just the apology, but there's this immediate fix, right? We'll get to step 3, which is when you have the opportunity to do this again. But in the moment, I think this confession apology piece is both words and actions.
But I don't think you, but Barak, I don't think you make it whole again, because making it whole again would mean that you didn't do anything wrong in the first place. That you didn't break something.
Yeah, I think there's probably a much better Jewish word that I don't know that means like doing your best to repair.
What's really the word for wholeness is related to the word shalom. The word for wholeness is shalem, and shalom is peace. So being at wholeness is similar to being at peace. And I'm also going back to the outsourcing and thinking about how if we apologize to please or appease a third party, could that also be known as learning from them, which is a high Jewish value?
That's interesting. So are you saying that as learning from someone else's apology, or learning
from the pain of making my own apology?
Yes. I think more to what Ethan was saying, that is what I meant. But if you are, I'm going to use the TV show as an example, apologizing because my sensei wants me to clean up their dojo, then what you're learning through the hard work is that, we've done wrong, and maybe even like we're doing this together, that the people who belong to the dojo that we messed up, well, they were fighting too. So they're cleaning up the dojo together, because really anytime you're in a physical fight, which is this entire TV show, there's more than one person in the wrong.
This is, you don't make peace with your friends, you make peace with your enemies.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to remember who said that. I mean, it's a prime minister of Israel, but I can't think of which one it was.
Was it Golda Meir?
No, it's a man. It's later.
Yitzhak Rabin.
It is Rabin. Thank you.
Thank you, Google.
Thank you, Google.
Thank you, Google. Yeah.
Yeah, that you don't have to make peace with your friends. And there is then inherent in there the implication that when I see you and you see me in a benevolent way, there is forgiveness that's built into an understanding that you will err and I will err and we will still be connected. That somewhere in the benevolence that is inherent in trust is an understanding that, we're going to mess this up and we're going to still care for each other.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I think this goes to what you were saying, RDY, before about the emails that need emojis, right? I think in order for this stage to work in some sense is that it's not just the person apologizing needs to feel this truly for it to work best. I think both parties have to be open to whatever this apology looks like for it to have any kind of impact or change for that person.
I might challenge that a little bit.
Oh, go ahead.
I would say to have the greatest impact, both have to be open to it. I think if I was apologizing to someone who didn't want to hear it, it would still bring something to me. But I think it would be deeper, obviously, if the other person was in a place to receive it. And also then if that could lead to a deepening of the relationship or deeper discussion. And of course, the caveat there being that like what I did was not so severe that person is justified in never talking to me again.
It makes me think, the whole thing makes me think about Ne'ilah, about the service at the end of Yom Kippur, which is in some sense celebratory. The gates are closing, but you've been forgiven. And the idea that God is willing to forgive us, I'm still not, I don't know what I think about what God is, but that forgiveness is possible implies that the relationship is valuable to all parties.
That's if we've done the work. Because the liturgy also says that for sins between a person and God, the Day of Atonement atones, but for sins between one person and another, the Day of Atonement does not atone until they've made peace with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a perhaps a third step of teshuva, maybe not one of the ones that you had intended, Barak, but there is a step in there that the apology and the reparations must be accepted by the wronged individual, and that puts a lot of onus on the one being apologized to. Although there's also the whole 3 chances thing. But
I was just going to ask about that. I was thinking that was this situation. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you say if you apologize and the person says I can't forgive you, then you have to give them that space and then come back and try again. And on the third time, if they still say I'm sorry, I can't forgive you, then you are forgiven kind of automatically. And then there's even a rabbinic teaching that your sin is now on them, because forgiveness is as much of a mitzvah as tshuva.
When you say that, are we ranking mitzvot?
Oh yeah, they're ranked.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if we have Maimonides' ladder and the Ethan Lane Miller teshuva ladder, then yeah, we are creating a hierarchy.
I bet somebody's got like mitzvot trading cards out there, right? Like, and you want the hologram, don't take a life, right? Like that's the
right. Idol worship.
Right.
Got it. Need it. Got it.
Right.
Okay, we are being nerdly if we're talking about trading cards.
I want to keep talking to Betsy all day, but I know our listeners have somewhere to be. So I'm going to move us on to the part 3 of the teshuva process, which is changing your ways. So after you've regretted and apologized, you now have to leave that sin behind and commit not to do it again. And this is habit changing. And Cobra Kai really doesn't get to this step until maybe season 4, when Danny and Johnny, spoiler alert, RDY, not just work together side by side for appearance's sake, but they end up teaching and learning from one another. And it's got to be one of my more favorite parts of the entire series. This hysterical.
Is actually where Natalie is right now. So I'm like kind of watching this part and kind of playing video games.
There's a great episode where they teach the others teachings and it comes full circle and it manifests itself, and it's wonderful that they've actually taken the teachings of the other person and taught in that way. So in terms of changing your ways, any advice on changing your ways? It's a hard thing.
So there's all this data on habits that says, you have to do it for 10 days or you have to do it 10 times or 10 is a magic number. I don't know why. I do think that there's something magic in trying to do something which is difficult and continuing to try. That if I'm willing to do something which is challenging for me, I have achieved something more than if I'm doing something which is easy for me. I think for lots of people, the superficial apology is pretty easy. I'm sorry. And if you add, I'm sorry I hurt you, it's even worse. Because then I'm not sorry about what I did. I'm sorry about how you took it. But the question is, I think, that the really interesting aspect of this is the question of self-restraint. And the place that I see this most is in the space of gossip. If I know that no good will be served by telling you this story, but it's a great story, what do I do with it? And what do I do? Do I get to tell you the story and say, but I'm not going to tell you who it was about? I'm not sure that qualifies for not sinning again. And here's a situation, particularly I think the question of gossip is a situation in which for many of us, gossip is a way for me to process what other people are doing, right? I have to think about why that happened and why that bothered me or amused me or whatever. But it's also in the social vernacular of the United States and surely of the Jewish community. It's a way in which I connect with the person who's present. So in some sense, the not sinning again here is also, it's not just not doing it, it's also sacrificing something in the relationship that I'm in right now. So if I decide not to tell you this story, which you and I will both think is funny, and we'll have a bridge building moment, I'm actually saying that this form of self-control, that I'm willing to not be as close to you, because what I really want to do is not do something that I'm going to regret or that has the potential to do harm.
I mean, you've got me thinking now, like, what points in my life? At what points in my life have I been impacted by someone's choice to not do something?
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, yeah, the positivity of choosing to not do a thing, and that is unknown to anyone except for us, your individual self.
You could. I'm not against. People can feel free to disagree, right? I totally agree. Communication, trust, and respect for that relationship triangle. If you're restraining yourself and it's hard and it's going to have an impact, I don't know if it's bad to say that, hey, I just need you to know I'm struggling with this and I'm going to not do this, but I have to hold back. So please, like, either help me with it or just.
That's like saying I have a secret. I'm not going to tell you.
Oh, okay.
It's an invitation. I think it is an invitation.
I think it depends on who you're saying it to.
I think it depends on who you're saying it. If like the communication trust, if you've got that strong relationship already, I think that's okay. If you're in that space of struggling with changing a habit, I think it would depend on the situation. But
okay.
I think if that situation is okay, I think, and you feel safe to do so, to share that I'm choosing not to do this and I need you to know for whatever that reason might be, I think that's okay in some situations.
Can I also go back to your question, Barack, about how does one make change?
Yeah. What's advice on changing your ways?
The advice that I love from the movie Contact is small moves. The main character, Jodie Foster's character, she flashbacks to her father telling her small moves. And he's talking about adjusting the telescope so that she can see properly. But she also relates that to getting people to see things the way she sees it. But that's also a great lesson on change in general, that when you're looking to change yourself, it's easier to go a little bit at a time, set a goal, set a new goal, set a new goal. And knowing that, you know, like, I am someone who struggles greatly with my weight. So instead of saying, you know, I need to lose 50 pounds, I say, okay, I need to get to this number, and then I need to get to this number, and I just work my way down.
Or just tomorrow I have to do this.
Sometimes.
In fact, significant change, lasting change always happens in small bits.
Right.
It always happens in small bits. Even when there's been kind of a tragedy that forces change, the digestion is always in little bits. And, you know, the idea that we need to lose 50 pounds, well, no, actually you need to lose an ounce. And then you need to lose another ounce.
Yeah, wow.
And we tend to say to ourselves, I need to achieve a big goal, but the big goal is a series of little goals. So if I don't gossip this time, that doesn't mean I'm not going to gossip next time.
Yeah.
But I have to celebrate the achievement of this time, which I think means that I have to be willing to celebrate the steps in between, like the mile markers on the highway, rather than only looking at how long the drive is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we did on that same note, on this, like, little bit by little bit.
Episode 33? Episode 33?
Not episode. I recently had a long drive with my family, and I saw this trick and it was like a 6-hour drive. So we put little Post-its up in the front rear view mirror that said 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and a star that we've arrived. And for our kids, every hour we removed a Post-it. And so for them, it wasn't a 6-hour drive. We were just getting to that next Post-it. That's all. That's what the next goal was. And
Right.
we were so excited when we got there. Yeah.
What a couple of educators you two are.
Before I wrap us out, does anybody have anything else they want to mention about teshuva or any of the Karate Kid properties?
Can we say don't bother with the TV show, just watch the movies?
If you're going to do the TV, I loved second half of season 4. I'm curious to see how it's going to wrap up.
I can't handle like, hey, just watch 3.5 seasons of Drek before you get to the good part.
So just skip the Drek.
So just watch whatever you want then. I think that's fine. So let me say, Mr. Miyagi was an extremely wise teacher. We all learned a lot from him about waxing cars and catching flies with chopsticks. And while many of his teachings were about the inner self and avoiding violence, he never really taught Daniel-san about true teshuva for any of the negative acts he did. He always stayed in that first step of the process. I'm glad that Cobra Kai can strike first in this area and show how to act when presented with the same opportunity twice. And maybe that's the original movie's lesson. It wasn't wax on, wax on, wax on, wax on. If you keep making the same mistakes, you can't move forward. When your whole life has balance, everything is better. So remember that if you wax on, you have to be sure to wax off, or else you may find yourself in a 30-year, never-ending revenge battle with your old high school bully, and nobody wants to see that. Unless, of course, you film it and put it on Netflix. Betsy, so good to have you with us today.
Oh, this was so much fun.
Loved it. I will point out this is our 36th episode, double high.
That's my favorite number.
Even more of a point to title this Cobra Kai. So thank you so much, Betsy, for being here. Loved it. I think you were a perfect choice for this episode.
Thank you so much. Bring me back.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that'll do it for this episode of Torah Smash. Our fiscal sponsor is Jewish Creativity International. Our theme music was created by Sean Fogel. You can check out Sean's bands and studio work at www.thesleepywest.com. This episode was supported in part by Juice. Juice, which stands for the Jewish Comics Experience, is a full-day convention and preview night that brings together fans, creators, and industry professionals to explore the rich history and contributions of diverse Jewish creators and content in the comics medium. Juice is created and hosted by the Center for Jewish History in New York City. If you're interested in attending or to learn more, visit juice.org. That's JEWCE.org. Also, visit the Center for Jewish History at cjh.org for new information on the institution and their partners, who are all involved in the upcoming exhibit, The Museum and Laboratory of the Jewish Comics Experience, opening in October 2023 at the Center for Jewish History. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. It helps others find us and is an excellent way to support the podcast. We want to hear from you and continue today's nerdy discussion. Go to torahsmash.com to find where to connect with us online, purchase swag from our store, support us with a donation, find previous episodes, and more. And what was the name of the Passover song about a baby goat that learns to defend himself? An Only Karate Kid.
You're a weirdo, David.